They can't win this debate because they haven't actually engaged with the correct comparative. The fact is, I'm going to prove why all of the community path to victory doesn't exist, but even if you believe all of that exists, they haven't engaged with all the people who are in a non-niche environment, so the majority of people who are going to get scammed by Theranos 2.0, who are going to get scammed by the get-rich-quick schemes you have to buy in really quickly for all of the AI companies. The fact that they haven't even considered this in their weighing after 3 speakers tells you that they can't win this debate. What am I going to do in today's speech? First, I'm going to look at the setup stuff, so that's like who and how the investment occurs. Then I'm going to look at are the investments good or bad, and then finally their path to victory and their only tunneled vision way of winning this debate on community values. What they explain, how and who. They said that it's going to be people who love it and they're going to invest. Obviously, we explained no, it's going to be young, inexperienced people who want to start getting into investment. Obviously, they don't know that crowdfunding is really bad, that there aren't a lot of regulations, this is harmful. Second, old and gullible people, again, stuff they have absolutely not contended with in this debate. But even if it's all of the community stuff, we really are just able to outweigh it. But I'm also going to prove why the community is more likely to hate you, as we've explained from second. They also said that people who are going to get scammed is symmetric. Obviously, this is not true because regulation exists on the stock market exchange, but they don't explain why regulation exists for them. We've given you good reasons as to why the SEC has little to no control of the things that goes on there. But second, also, that the money isn't necessarily handled by yourself, i.e. an old person puts all their money into a pension fund, that pension fund goes to a bank or like a law firm and they say, okay, we're going to put it into this sort of money. Now the comparative and the delta in this debate is you're forcing old people to make investment decisions which they wouldn't have had to make. The money would have just trickled in for them anyways. Finally, their last thing to set up was the types of companies. We already explained to you the types of companies that are going to. That is that they either couldn't get an IPO, so we already know that they're going to be in bad investment, and second, that they wanted more control. Obviously, that means they're not going to listen to the community. This harms their path to victory. We also explained that this is majority of the case going to be AI companies and Theranos, etc. This is incredibly risky. They need to describe why the status quo exists, but also they have the burden to explain the rise of the companies like AI companies and Theranos, etc. Let's get into the first point of clash then. Why is it that like all the risky investment sort of stuff? They explain to you that crowdfunding isn't that risky. First of all, no, because of the regulation that doesn't exist. But second, people don't know what they're doing, i.e. the stuff that I explained to you. They just put it into a hedge fund. They just put it into a trust. They give the money to a bank who does the investment for them. There's no education that exists for old people. Second, that they don't actually have a long-term road and go. They just put it on a GoFundMe. They get like maybe even $1 billion, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have the financial analysis, the investors that came in to mentor them, to guide them to be able to have long-term success. Obviously, this makes them much more liable. Again, we also explained to you that private companies can't just not show their books. This obviously means that they're more susceptible and more liable to actually doing things that are incredibly scammy because they don't have to follow certain regulations. Additionally then, the small companies they're just describing don't really need that much investment. They keep explaining to you all the niche sort of stuff. I think the example here is like, okay, people in the D&D community put $1 billion into the company and they get a few figurines out of it. What we're explaining here is that's not really investment, that's buying merchandise. I think the comparative at the end of the day doesn't even really make that much sense. And finally then, because there is no transparency, even if you believe in the startup, you're going to get a lot of money from the crowdfunding, this doesn't come to fruition in any other sort of way. Because when you go to a bank, they're going to be like, how did you get your money? Who was your mentor? How were you stable? And you just say, no, just some random people gave me money. Obviously, you're not going to get loans. Obviously, future investment bankers will not give you money because they don't trust the things that you're able to do. They then attempt to flip this and to say that the stock exchange is incredibly more risky. We gave you good responses that kind of just went unresponded to. First, that is to say that it is a safe choice. Look at the banks that have existed even after the global financial crisis, HSBC, Bank of America, all the niche little companies they explain, they die out as soon as any sort of crisis or any sort of volatility even exists. They're also more likely to be bailed out. They also have more lobbying power to get that bailout, more lobbying power to stay in control of the market. This is obviously obviously the more safe choice. Finally, then again, we'll just repeat that they have investors to help the startup, mentoring support, etc. So I think at that point, we're already able to prove to you that like the investment is better. Even if they say like you're more likely to scam, I think we can just cop this. We say that angel investors, let them get scammed. We really don't care. If you care about vulnerability, about old people, angel investors, they have tons of money. They're really, really rich. This is a buffer. You can forget about it. We can still win. Okay, let's then deal with their path to victory, because this is the kind of Hail Mary that they attempt to win on community. First off, I want to note the characterization they've given us. That is, they're going to keep giving them money to keep them afloat. What that means then is they've already conceded that lots of these investments are likely going to be really bad, and they're fine with that because they just say, oh, we just want to keep the community. But what that also means is you have to be able to, they have to explain why losing your life savings is still enough for you to love your D&D community. I think it's unclear the extent to which they're able to prove this. The fact that they say no matter what happens, people are going to keep pouring money, more and more money, their kids' life savings. They're going to ask their parents for money as well. That makes you hate your community. Then let's deal with this on their best case. I think there's still to say that there's going to be a level of betrayal that we've already explained to you at Fiona, because when things don't go your way, or when you've invested like $50,000 into League of Legends and all you get is like a loincloth Ari skin, I think that's probably where you get kind of angry, because you're like, hey, where did all of my money go? So you start to see how the build-up of the hate to the actual company itself exists. But second, the company is also going to be in shambles. It's obviously very awkward, like just in a relationship when you have to share your finances. So it's going to be much more open to scrutiny, because when the company does things that are not necessarily that bad, or when the decisions that they make don't align with yours, but you have stake in the money, even if it's not necessarily a stock, but you have money invested into it, you expect good things to come out, you're obviously holding the companies to a higher level of scrutiny that makes you more likely to hate them when they make bad decisions. What does this mean for them in terms of their winning? First, they haven't proved that things going bad will automatically mean that the community stability stays the same. And second, it takes out their main path to victory. They can't win this debate. They attempt to overcome this by saying that the bad investment doesn't really matter, but this also just assumes that these companies are really good people. Insofar as we're able to say, okay, sure, maybe the people don't care, but maybe they love each other, like love the company, but the company doesn't necessarily love the community. They're still open to being to take advantage of it. Even if the community stuff is important, it sets a precedent for all of the other companies, like the AI ones, like the Theranos ones, to be able to continue to do really, really bad work. So I think at the end of the day, I don't really feel the community point is that strong, especially when they explain to you right from the get-go that this is incredibly niche, that it doesn't really affect a lot of people. They haven't even explained why they're vulnerable, why they're necessarily that important. They're just people that get a little bit more utility. Why have we won? First off, because we've been able to prove that the rise in the number of scams and the investment, which is first on scale and second on vulnerability, because of the gullible, because the majoritarians are harmed in this debate more than the marginal extent of benefit that someone gets from getting a figurine. But second, they just haven't been able to engage with the proper comparative. Like, who is actually going to do it? Why? Because they haven't been able to go into the stock exchange means they're already incredibly risky. Why people who won't just get pissed off at the company that they're supposed to love destroys the community. If they loved it so much already, they would have been successful. They could have just gone to the stock exchange.